Hello and welcome. Today I am bringing together two of my favorite topics, that is writing routines and the female hormone cycle. If you haven't heard of it, cycle syncing is the idea of adjusting your daily activities to mesh with your 28-ish day hormone cycle. It's a very popular topic in the realm of health and fitness, especially female health, and I had a feeling that it would also be effective and impactful on creative work. So that's what today's video is all about. So to start with, let's just look at the idea of a 28-ish, I'll probably say 28 instead of ish every single time, but 28-ish day hormone cycle versus a 24-hour hormone cycle. So in the world of female health, where we're talking a lot about cycle syncing and the hormone cycle, we see the comparison drawn a lot between like a male hormone cycle, testosterone-based hormone cycle, which is resets every 24 hours, and a female hormone cycle, which lasts generally for 28 days. So if you've ever seen a graph of the female hormone cycle, you can see that over the course of 28 days, there are different hormones peaking at different times. And this is often explained as like you are not the same person on any day of the cycle, really, because something is always changing, right? So there are peaks and valleys, and there are corresponding energy levels and mood shifts and all sorts of other things that go along with that. So to my understanding, this could be a good explanation for why many writing routines that we see people, creators doing videos about, why they might not be effective, and that is that they tend to expect us to perform in the same way day after day after day. So that can be really discouraging, right? When you have a really great high energy day and you're like, wow, yeah, I managed to write for 6 hours today, which, wow, that's like a just wild amount of time. I don't know if I've ever done that, but you might be able to do that one day because that might have been a day when you were really feeling your strongest peaks of energy. And then you're disappointed when 3 days later, you just can't do that. And you might take that as a personal failing, but that might just be the state that your body is in at that point in time. Also, when we try some of these like more intense writer's routines, I think you would notice a different impact on like day 1 of your cycle versus day 14 of your cycle, for example, just picking a couple of random days. So I think it depends very, very much. If you are someone who has a 28-day hormone cycle instead of a 24-hour hormone cycle, it really depends on when you are attempting it. And so it's not a personal failing if you're not able to perform consistently day after day after day. It might just mean that you have female hormones, and that's a perfectly wonderful thing. About half the population does. So for my introduction to this topic, I tended to prefer going with books. I really enjoyed, the first one I read was In the Flow by Elisa Vitti, and that is still probably the most impactful book that I have read about the hormone cycle and cycle syncing. I have also used a few different apps that kind of give me a notification every day to say like, you might be feeling this way, you might be feeling that way. I'm not going to recommend any apps like that because I've been feeling a bit of resistance to them myself. It's not only about like sharing your personal data with an app, which I do find a little bit concerning, but it's also about the fact that when I get a notification on my phone telling me you might feel a certain way today, it's hard not to feel like there's some amount of self-fulfilling prophecy to that the app is telling me I might be moody today, and so therefore I'm going to be moody today. So instead, I much prefer to just observe what's going on within myself. So it can be a good introduction to have these apps that say like, you might be feeling this certain way, you might be a little more low energy, you might be, but not to treat that app as like the be-all end-all expertise on your body, because where's the expertise on your body? It's here. It is you. It is your body. Because even though there might be patterns, we are all individuals, and your system is the most important one to listen to. So what I did to notice in particular how my writing, and especially like my output, my word count, was affected by my cycle, I just started keeping track on a spreadsheet of the word count that I had on different days. So instead of saying you must write this certain number of words every single day, I was just keeping track of how many words I actually did write. And then I went back through, and in a column next to it, I noted what day of my cycle it was. And I went and looked for patterns there. So for example, for myself, I tend to notice that like the first 2 days of my cycle, I really want a break. Like those are intense days. Those are not days that I really feel like going after big goals. So those are days that I might just give myself off. I really don't need that. And another thing that I notice is that generally about 4 days before my cycle, so on about day 24, that is often a particularly emotional day for me. That's a pattern I've noticed after paying attention to my own cycle for many, many, many repetitions, that there's often one particular day that I have kind of a little bit of a tearful output, and I'm like, what's going on? Why do I feel so bleak and so hopeless? And then I get out my calendar and I look and I say, well, you're about 4 days from day one, so that might be what it's about, honey. It's okay. So at those 2 times in particular, I really don't want to add on to that by expecting a lot of creative output from myself as well. Like, the most important priority is just taking care of myself, taking care of my emotions, taking care of my physical being. Now, the other thing, this isn't just about noticing what is hard and what is low and what might be challenging. It's also about noticing, the positives too. So after those first 2 days, generally it's about like in the evening on day 2 or certainly on day 3 of my cycle that I start getting really, really full of ideas and excited like about all the things I want to do. And I think in part that's because I give myself a bit of a break there. It's sort of like whenever I am sick and I just really can't do a lot, then I find myself really wanting to do a lot, so I'm like, oh, I think I want to go for a run, which like I'm not a runner anymore, but when I have a cold and I'm almost over that cold, suddenly I'm like, I just really want to go for a run. Like, you just want to do the things that you aren't doing in that time. So it's similar here where I'm like, I'm giving myself a break. I'm not doing more than the bare minimum. And suddenly the ideas are flowing and I'm jotting down so many little post-it notes and sticking them all over the place because I'm just so energized about what I am about to be able to do. So when some of the language that we see for explaining the different phases of the cycle are that it's like your inner winter, spring, summer, fall. So of course, it's similar that in spring, your inner spring, like outer spring, the spring that happens in the world around us, tends to be a time when we're like, ooh, possibility, excitement, like what can I do? Now that winter is over, what does life have in store for me? So in terms of practical takeaways here, I certainly would say, read books. Like, In the Flow is a great book. You can look for other books that might resonate with you, that might talk about specific concerns that you might have. The library is a great resource, and certainly you can find a lot of expertise about these topics. I mean, certainly there are a lot of people on the internet as well, just sharing educational materials about all of this. And I think that's great. I think that's really wonderful. Always, though, I'm going to come back to, I think the most important thing is tapping in with yourself. So this is me, if you need it, giving you a permission slip to observe yourself, listen to yourself, feel how you feel. Don't tell yourself you need to feel differently, just feel however you feel. So check in with yourself in the morning or over the course of a day, certainly over the course of a month, and say, like, when am I really feeling great, high energy, creative? When am I feeling like I want to retreat a little more? And just because, so like if you do decide to use some sort of app, if that app tells you that you should be high energy today and you should want to do like a really intense workout, but you don't feel that, who are you going to listen to? The app or yourself? And I certainly hope your answer would be yourself, because you know yourself better than any external app, person, resource, anything does. So even if this knowledge is nothing more than just permission to feel what you already feel, then I hope that is great and powerful and a takeaway that you carry with you, because it's certainly true. You do have permission to feel however you feel, and yeah, enjoy the high days when they come. Like, I certainly love those high energy days where I have idea after idea after idea, and I just feel like I can keep going and going and going. Even though there's a part of me that wants that to be that way all the time, I understand that it can't be, because that's a recipe for burnout. So I'm like, enjoy it when it comes, capture it when it comes, but when it starts to slip away and you start to get into that inner fall, certainly towards inner winter, I'm going to cozy up a bit. I'm going to read a nice, cozy, comforting book. I'm going to snuggle with a cat. I'm going to take it easy. Spring will come again, and I will be ready with fresh ideas when it does. So my conclusion here is that if you have this 28-ish day hormone cycle, then listen to yourself and pay attention to how you feel and behave accordingly. And also, if you don't have this 28-ish day hormone cycle, if you are just a human existing in a human body, then you have permission to do the same thing. Pay attention to how you feel, listen to your body, and do what you need to do to take care of yourself. You have permission to feel however you feel, and also plan for days that you're going to rest. You know, I mean, certainly when they come up and you need them, take them, but you can plan ahead and say, next Friday, I'm going to rest and I'm not going to feel guilty about it, because there's nothing to feel guilty about, is there? Rest is just essential. I find it far better to have a plan knowing that I'm going to rest rather than having something hanging over my head like, oh, I know I should be doing this thing. I keep pushing it later and later, like, oh, I'm going to write, at lunchtime. Oh, I'm going to write in the afternoon. Oh, I'm going to write later. Oh, I'm going to write later. And it's hanging over my head, creating this guilt that I'm not doing it. But instead, if I just say, no, I'm not writing today, I'm going to write tomorrow. Well, that feels so much better. So it's just a friendly reminder to be kind to yourself. I'd love to know if this is something you've heard of before, if it's something you've played around with. Certainly, if there are any resources that you found helpful, please feel free to share them in the comments. See you next time.